All right, this is 6.10, equations of circles. This is our last section for circles. So circles is a big unit. So we're now moving to the coordinate grid or coordinate plane, and we're going to be graphing circles, and we're going to write equations of circles and be able to state certain parts of a circle given the graph. Okay, so let's recall what a circle is. It's defined by the set of all points in the coordinate plane that are a fixed distance, okay, and that fixed distance is the radius, okay? So right, for example here, that radius right there, that's going to be the same distance all the way around. So there's infinitely many points going around this circle, okay? So there's all those points that are a fixed distance from a given point, okay, which is this point right here. So this point at the center, and so the circle, in this case, has a radius of 5. So from the center to the end, that's 5 units, okay? From here to here, it's 5. Anywhere you draw a radius, that's going to be 5 units away, okay? So on this picture also, it does show the point called x comma y. So right there, x comma y. And so there's 3 points that I want you to focus on. I want you to focus on the 0, 0 point, which is right there, the x comma 0 point, which is right here, and then the x comma y, which is right there. So those 3 coordinates form a triangle. I'm going to highlight this triangle right now in green. Okay, so that green triangle is a right triangle. So what do we know about right triangles? We know Pythagorean theorem, okay? And so I'm just going to write it out. Instead of being a squared plus b squared equals c squared, okay, right here, this bottom segment, okay, that I just highlighted in green, that's x units long. That's x. This segment right here is y units long. So that's why we can write x squared plus y squared equals, well, we've talked about what this radius was. The radius was 5 units long, and so that's representing c, which is 5 squared. Okay, and so that right there is where the equation comes from. It actually comes from the Pythagorean theorem. So let's investigate it a little bit more. Over here, it says the equation that is centered at the origin. Okay, so right here, this is the center of the circle, and it's at the origin. So there's only one way to write equations for these right here, and these are real easy, okay? So if it's centered at the origin, it's always going to be x squared plus y squared equals r squared. And r is always going to represent the radius. So here's the origin, okay? The radius you can always get from looking at the coordinates. So the radius in this case happens to be, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. Okay, so the radius is 5. And so now this should be pretty easy to write this equation because it's always going to be x squared plus y squared equals r squared, which you're going to plug in the 5 for r. And so you want to write it like that should be fine. Sometimes you can write it out like that as well. Okay, now the origin is not always going to contain the center of a circle. Okay, the center of the circle is not always going to be at the origin like this next example. So here's the origin, here's the center of the circle, which is not at the origin of the graph. It's actually at 5, -6. So for any circle whose center is located at the point h, k, meaning it's not at 0, 0, it's at some number, comma, some number. It could be anything with the radius r. And this is how you're going to write that equation. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So it's similar to the other one, but you've got to involve the center. So let's write down what the center was. The center, which was h, comma, k, is at 5, -6. So h is represented with 5 and k is represented with -6. So all we're going to do is plug those numbers into the equation. So here's how this equation would look. X minus h, which was 5 squared, plus y minus k, which k was -6. So minus a negative, you know what to do with that. Squared equals, what's the radius here? Let's count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. Okay, so the radius was 5. So I'm just going to write 25. Okay, the only other thing that you will want to do is make sure you turn that to a plus sign right there. Okay. And so you'll get used to it where you just write it out from the beginning. X minus 5 squared plus y plus 6 squared equals 25. Okay, so we're going to write out some equations and maybe identify some parts of the circle with all sorts of examples here next. So let's start off with problem 1. It says state the radius and the center of the circle and then graph it. Okay, so remember, whenever it's in the form of x squared plus y squared, you should know that the center is going to always be 0, 0. Okay, and then the number over here on the right side of the equal sign, that is represented by r squared. Okay. And so if 49 is r squared, what would r be? Well, you just square root that to solve for r. And so r is 7. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and graph that. So the center is at 0, 0. So we're going to put a point there. And then the radius is 7. So there, you want to count it out at least, several different ways. So right here, there, and there, and there. Okay, and you can usually just sketch the circle. It's hard to sketch a circle. I don't really like sketching them. So me being a little neat freak, I'll probably go ahead and use my compass. Okay, if you don't have a compass, you can just sketch it. Okay, so let's use different color. Let's use blue. Okay. And sometimes it doesn't always go perfect on the smart board because it doesn't rotate correctly. So let's try it again. That's a little bit better. Okay. And again, you don't have to use the compass if you don't want to, but I like using the compass. So that's what the graph of that one would look like. Okay, let's look at this next one. So on this next one, you should know that the center is not going to be at 0, 0, okay, because it doesn't look like x squared plus y squared. What you need to focus on is, and let me get my highlighter, you need to focus on this number and this number right here, okay? And I'm going to rewrite the equation of the form of an equation of a circle. So it's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Okay, so minus h. Now this doesn't have a minus, but remember, minus a negative is really a positive. So this number right here is like a -2. This one is in has the minus like the formal equation. So this is a magic number 2. So the actual center, okay, of this equation is going to be -2, 5. Okay, and so that's how you have to get get the center when you're looking at this type of equation. Okay, now over here, r is not going to be a nice whole number like it was on the example before, and that's okay. Okay, so r squared equals 18. Just like we did over here on the left, we square root that 18, and so r equals, remember the little factor tree, and that's 3 comma 3, underline the 2. So r equals 3 radical 2. Now that's kind of hard to tell what that radius would look like. So sometimes you need to put that in your calculator. So you can put 18 and then square root that. That's about 4.25 roughly. So r is about 4.25. That's our radius. So now let's go ahead and graph this circle. So the center was at -2, 5. So we want to go 2 to the left, up 5. So go ahead and plot your center there. And then the radius is about 4.25. So I'm going to count 4.25 out to the right. And it's not going to be perfect. This is just kind of like an estimate. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then not just a little bit past it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then a little bit past it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And just past it. Okay. And so now, like I said, I like to use my compass. So I'm going to get my compass. Actually, let's go this way. Okay, and then I'm going to get a different color. Let's get blue. Oopsie. Try it again. Let's try it one more time. And again, it's okay. It's not going to be perfect. See, that looks like it's right on the thing. So I'm going to go a little bit further out. Okay, so my smart notebook isn't that great, so probably sketching it would have been a little bit better. And again, like that's fine, because you're going to graph some on your homework. Okay. All right, so just the sketch is good. And as long as it's in between, probably needs to go a little bit smaller. There we go, that looks a little bit better. Okay. All right, and again, just the sketch is fine. So there's the center. Let me go ahead back and highlight a couple of things of what we needed to get down. The center on this first one was 0, 0, because it's easy to tell when it's x squared plus y squared. The radius was 7 because we get that from that 49, okay? Over here, a little bit more work to figure out the center, but the center was -2, 5. So that was the center for the second equation, a little bit more work. And then the radius was not real pretty, but it comes from that 18, and you just have to square root the 18, okay? And so you can write it like that. In this case, we had to graph it, so we wanted to look at the decimal, okay? But if we ask you to leave it in radical form, be able to do that, okay? That's something we learned a while back. All right, let's go to the next examples. It says write an equation for the circle shown on the graph. All right, so I'm looking at this graph. I see that the center is at the origin, and all I need to do next is figure out what the radius is, and the radius is easy. That's a 2. Okay, so the radius is 2. The center is 0, 0. So the equation is pretty simple to write. It's always going to be x squared plus y squared. And since the radius is 2, remember it equals r squared. R squared in this case, 2 squared is 4. So here's my equation of that circle there. All right, here's another example where there's a circle on a graph and it says write the equation out. Okay, so where is the center at? The center is not at the origin. The center is at 2, -5. Okay, so the center is at 2, -5. And then the radius is 1, 2, 3, 4. So the radius is 4. Oops. All right, so now I know the center and I know the radius. So this is the equation that I want to use. I want to use the x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals radius squared. Oops, I wrote that one wrong, sorry. Squared needs to go outside the parentheses. All right, so now let's plug in what we know. So we know that this is always going to be h and that's going to be k, h comma k. So it's going to be x minus 2 squared plus y minus negative 5, which becomes a plus, squared equals 4 squared, which is, I'm going to go ahead and write 16. Okay? And so that's my equation that I want to be able to write down. That's what you're going to do on your homework. I'm going to give you a picture of a graph and you have to write out the equation. Okay, and all you have to figure out is what's the center and what's the radius. Because if you know those two things, then you can write out the equation. All right, let's look at these next two problems. It says write the equation for a circle with the given center and radius. Okay, so the radius is at 0, 0, so you should know it's going to start out like x squared plus y squared. The radius is 9, so remember it equals r squared, so I'm going to just write 81. And that's the equation given those two pieces of information. Over here it says write the standard equation for the circle with the given center and the radius. So the center is not at the origin, so it's going to be written different. Sometimes if you have to write this down, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, do that and then you can plug in as you read it. So h is always the first one, k is always the second one. So it's going to be x minus negative 3, remember those go to positive, squared plus y minus 4 squared equals 1/2 squared. So sometimes we don't know how to square a fraction, so you can do that off to the side. 1/2 squared is the same thing as doing 1/2 times 1/2, which that's pretty simple. It's just 1/4. 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4. So this is going to be 1/4. Or you could do 0.25. Okay, so this is the equation given those two pieces of information. Okay, so this is pretty easy lesson. All right, last problem of the day. The given coordinates represent the endpoints of the diameter of a circle. Write the standard form of equation. Okay, this one's a little bit more to it. Okay, so we have this circle. I'm going to give you a quick sketch. Okay, 9, negative 3, let's just say somewhere there, 1, negative 9, somewhere right here. That is the diameter of the circle. So the center is right in the middle, and the circle is going to look something like that. Okay, and so since we know that the center is not going to be at the origin, so it's not going to, we're going to have to use the equation x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Okay, so this one's pretty tough because I don't know the origin, and I don't know the center, and I don't know the radius either. So how do I get the center? That's going to be the first easy step. The way I'm going to get the center is I'm going to use these two, and I'm going to, since we know the center is right at the midpoint of the endpoints of the diameter, I'm going to find the midpoint of those two. So I'm going to do 9 plus 1 divided by 2, and then I'm going to do negative 3 plus negative 9 and divide that by 2. Okay, so this is pretty easy. 9 plus 1 is 10. 10 divided by 2, that's going to be 5. Negative 3 plus negative 9 is negative 12. And negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. Okay, so now I know the center. The center of this particular circle is going to be at 5, negative 6. Okay, so I'm almost there. Now I just need to find the radius, okay? And the radius can be a little tough, okay? So you can use the distance formula to find the radius, okay, because I have to find the length. Or you can use Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to show you how to use Pythagorean theorem because I think that one's a little bit easier. So if this is at 5, negative 6, and then this point over here is at 1, negative 9, so that's 5, negative 6, you want to kind of make a little right triangle here, okay? And so if this right here is at 5, and this right here is at I'm sorry, that's not 1, -9. That's 9, -3. Let me rewrite that one. I just flipped flop. So this one's 9, -3. So that right there is going to be a length of 4. If it goes from 5 to 9, then that means that length there is 4. Okay. Now this right here is -6, so we have that being at -6. And then this coordinate over here is -3, so that's at -3. So the vertical height there, going from -3 to -6, is 3 units long. So if that's 3 and that's 4, okay, I am a little bit quicker at doing Pythagorean theorem. I can just do 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. And that'll give me the length of that radius right there. So 3 squared plus 4 squared, 9 plus 16, that's 25. Square root, c equals 5, which the radius is 5. Okay, now if you don't remember that, you can use the distance formula. Okay, I'm going to write that down for you. It's x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay, do y'all remember that distance formula? Okay, so then you would plug in -5. You would plug in, let me get my highlighter, the center, and then one of these endpoints, and you would plug those into this distance formula so you can get the length of the radius. Okay, so I'm going to show my work there on that just so you can see that we're going to get 5 again. Okay, so let's see, x2 I'm going to use as 5 minus x1 is 1 squared plus -6 minus -9 squared. So that's 4 squared plus, what's -6 plus 9? 3 squared. Don't forget you're square rooting this whole thing. 4 squared plus 3 squared is 25. And so the square root of 25 is 5. So there's the radius. So now I know, now that I have my center is at -5, -6, and my radius is equal to 5. I'm going to highlight those in bright yellow because those are the 2 important pieces of information that I need to get the equation of the circle. And I'm pretty much almost done. So I have x minus h, which is 5 squared, plus y minus k, which is -6 squared. Oops, not plus. I don't know why I put plus. Equals 5 squared, which is 25. Don't forget to turn those to a plus. And there's my equation when I'm given the endpoints of a diameter. And that is it.